Hello. We've got some new Ozeki, and it looks like they're looking for a new belt. But what is a Yokozuna run, really? Stop throat!
Roll the salt, get in the ring. Welcome to the Dohyo.
Hello and welcome back to the Dohyo here on MrJWags channel. Today we have an amazing episode where we go through the stats of modern sumo and figure out what is a Yokozuna run really. We know what they tell us, but what is it really? But first, a sumo shout-out. Those of you with sharp eyes may have noticed that since our last video we have passed 2,000 subscribers! So first of all, a huge thanks to all of you who made up the first 2,000, and number 2,000 himself, Rob Spiewak. Thank you so much. Please let us know at the email below, MrJWagsChannel@gmail.com. You have won a sumo shoutout and the right to hashtag pick the flannel on a future episode. So hit me up at that email. Let me know what color flannel you would like me to represent on a future Dohyo episode. So yeah, Rob, thanks for joining us. Sumo shoutout. So a few months ago we did a video on what it actually takes to make an Ozeki run really. There's been a lot of rumors, a lot of things said online, and a lot of things frankly said by the JSA that didn't end up being true when we looked at the history. Well, we are back and we are doing the same thing, but this time for Yokozuna runs. What does it take to get the rope really? It is very exciting to finally be at a point again in sumo history where a future Yokozuna discussion is relevant again. So as I was developing this episode, turns out I was actually writing two separate episodes. There was this episode where we're just going to go through the hard stats and figure out the Yokozuna promotion rules, but we have another episode which is about all the stories of these interesting Yokozuna promotions, close Yokozuna non-promotions, and these crazy cases where we had these guys get utter overkill to finally get promoted from Ozeki to Yokozuna. But yes, those stories, all those details, all that context will be in a near future episode. This episode is going to be just about the hard stats. That doesn't mean there will be no digressions, no quick sidebars, and no interesting details, but a great deal of them will be in a future episode. And once again, like in the Ozeki Run episode, we are going to be discussing some parameters. First, all of these stats are through Sumo Reference, so I trust Sumo Reference implicitly, and if you have a reason for me not to, please tell me. But otherwise, all of these stats are going to be Sumo Reference based. I have run two parallel datasets, one from 1958 to the present, and one from 1987 to the present. 1958 was, of course, the start of the 6 basho a year system, so that is what a lot of people consider the birth of modern sumo. I also like to go from 1987, which was in fact the year we had our first non-Japanese Ozeki, Konishiki, and we also had the Futahagaro scandal where Yokozuna Futahagaro was expelled from sumo without ever winning a yusho. Scandal. Now oddly enough, we have two Yokozuna, Hokuto Umi and Ono Kuni, who were promoted in 1987. So I'm going to include them in the 1987 and after group, even though the Futahagaro scandal happened after they were promoted. The Konishiki promotion either happened at the same time, concurrently, like same tournament, or just after. So I'm going to put them in the set, and also I like to have a larger data set when in doubt. So those Yokozuna will be included in the post-87 stats. And once again, I'm only looking at the past. I cannot know what is going on in the future, so if something unprecedented happens with a promotion in the near future, sorry, I can only go with the past I have been given up to this point. Cool? The first rule of Yokozuna promotion seems a little obvious, but here it is. You must be an Ozeki to be promoted to Yokozuna. This one's absolutely true. You're not going to see a case of a Sekiwake or a Komusubi or a Maegashira suddenly being promoted to Yokozuna. They want to be very, very sure about these promotions. In fact, I could not find a single case where a wrestler hadn't been Ozeki for at least 3 basho before his promotion. Now some of you might say, but what about Terunofuji? He just got promoted after only 2 tournaments at Ozeki. Yes, but remember, this was his second time at Ozeki. He had 14 basho back from like 2015 to 2017. So if we look at it that way, it took a very long time for Terunofuji to get his rope from his first Ozeki promotion. But in modern sumo history, we have in fact seen 3 instances of wrestlers making Yokozuna after only 3 straight tournaments at Ozeki. And I don't know if you've heard of these guys, but they are Kitano Umi in 1974, Chiyono Fuji in 1981, and Asashoryu in 2002 and 2003. I know, who's heard of those guys? And on top of that, not only do you have to be an Ozeki, not only do you have to be an Ozeki for 3 tournaments, but you cannot be Kataban. I did not see any single examples of someone going from Kataban to another victory to Yokozuna. You must be an Ozeki in good standing and have spent at least 3 basho at Ozeki. Rule. Now, the second rule you might have seen is that a Yokozuna promotee needs to get 2 consecutive basho or equivalent. This is true, but what the heck is equivalent? Now, actually, if we start at 1987 and go beyond, there seems to be a reasonably consistent standard, and that standard is you need 25 plus wins over consecutive basho, and both of those tournaments must be either a yusho or a jun yusho. And according to recent history, the worst you can do in either of those tournaments is a 12-3. This does not seem to be the case pre-1987. Now, pre-1987, we have a few cases where it looks like they would give credit to wrestlers who got like a dip, you know, like a dip. They would do really well in one tournament, and then they'd say, oh, that's amazing. If you get X number of wins, you're a Yokozuna. And then they didn't. And then the tournament after that, they ended up doing it. So they're like, okay. And they ended up giving credit for these 2 tournaments, but the one in the middle, they gave him a little bit of a dip. This happened to Asashio, Kashiwado, and channel favorite Tamano Umi. Now, if you look at Tamano Umi's stats right before promotion, he was an Ozeki. He got a 13-2 yusho, then he ended up getting a 10-win, but then he got a 13-win playoff loss, and ended up getting promoted along with good friend and rival Kita no Fuji. And yes, we will explore all 3 of those promotions in detail in the forthcoming episode. Now, I did find one case in sumo history where this rule did not quite fit. It was the beginning of 1964, and Tochino Umi, coming off of a 14-1 yusho, got a 13-2, but did not get the yusho or jun yusho, but ended up getting 27 wins over 2 with the yusho, got promoted. He ended up finishing 3rd in that tournament to a 15-0 Taiho, and future Ozeki Kiyokuni got a 14-1. So a very rare case of a 13-2 not getting you the yusho or the jun yusho, but they gave him the belt anyway. And the third rule I see online quite a bit is that you must have a yusho before you become a Yokozuna. This is true now. Of course, going back to 1986, Futahagaro was promoted without any yusho. He was very, very close. He had a very excellent tournament to get promoted to Yokozuna, where he beat the sole Yokozuna in the ring on day 15, Chio no Fuji, and he ended up losing the playoff. So it was a deserved promotion, even though he did not get a yusho. But ever since then, no. As I said in the Ozeki Run video, things get a lot harder for promotion after Futahagaro and Konishiki both got promoted. Now, do you have to have a yusho at Ozeki? This one is mostly true. In fact, every single Yokozuna since 1958 has won a tournament at Ozeki, except Miyano Umi. He ended up winning his first championship at Sekiwake. That ended up boosting him up to Ozeki, but he did not get his next yusho until he had already been promoted to Yokozuna later. He ended up getting promoted later with a 13-2 jun yusho and a 14-1 playoff loss to then Yokozuna Wajima. So that's 79, it happened before 87. Now this is one of those things I'm not sure is a rule or is it just what has been happening. These are the best wrestlers in the world, so it makes sense that they would get tournament wins at Ozeki. For example, if Hoshoryu started his Ozeki career with 3 straight 14-1 jun yusho, losing to Terunofuji every time, I'm pretty sure they'd consider that Yokozuna worthy, especially because he's fulfilled all the other criteria. So we'll say the rule is you have to have a yusho, but not necessarily one from Ozeki. The next rule I have seen is that to end your Yokozuna run, you must have a basho with 13 or more wins. Not negotiable. This one is mostly true. Since 1987, anyway, there has only been one case of a Yokozuna being promoted with a 12-3, and this was a very special case. This was Wakanohana III. He ended up winning a 14-1 yusho, and then ended up winning a 12-3 yusho, and he got promoted after that. He got to 26 wins over 2, which is over the bar. He had 2 straight yusho, which is over the bar, and the fact is, those were his 4th and 5th yusho. So this Wakanohana exception tells me this is probably just a coincidence and not quite a Yokozuna rule. So, since 1987, if you want to be promoted to Yokozuna, you must be an Ozeki in good standing, not Kataban, with at least 3 basho at the rank. You must have won at least 1 yusho previously in the Sanyaku, though not necessarily at Ozeki. You must win 2 consecutive yusho, or the 12-win Jun yusho or better equivalent, and you must win 25 plus matches total over those consecutive yusho. And of course, as with the Ozeki rules, meeting all of these criteria does not guarantee you promotion. And we are going to explore this a whole lot in the Near Misses Yokozuna episode, they will take into consideration other factors, such as the candidate's previous excellence in the ring and or the current number of healthy Yokozuna at any given time. I have definitely seen this taken into consideration in the past. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, if 25 isn't the hard top, what is the hard top? 28. If you get 28 over 2 at Ozeki, it seems to be a dead lock that you will be promoted to Yokozuna. Now, 28 is a very, very high bar. And as we can see, several Yokozuna were promoted without getting anywhere near that. So what happened to these guys who got 27 and didn't get promoted? Well, there were 5 Rikishi who ended up getting 27 wins over 2 consecutive basho at Ozeki, and they were not promoted. But fortunately, they were all promoted in the near future after that. Onokuni, Asahi Fuji, Takanohana II, Musashi Maru, and Hakuho. And all 5 of these cases were post-Futahaguro, so that should tell you how much the bar was raised for Yokozuna promotion after that. And 5 Rikishi also got 26 wins over 2 tournaments at Ozeki and were not promoted. Now this one was a little more interesting because a couple of them happened before 87 and 3 of them happened after. The ones before, Wakanohana II and Sadanoyama. And after 87, Asahi Fuji, Konishiki, and Kisano Sato. All of them ended up making Yokozuna eventually, except Konishiki. But we will tell his story in a future episode. Thanks so much for stopping by the Dohyo. Please remember to like and subscribe. Remember, if you do not like and subscribe, I will fade slowly like a photo negative in a Back to the Future movie. So please, for my sake, like and subscribe. Stay tuned. Of course, we have the Yokozuna Near Misses Borderline Cases episode. I'm going to try to get that up before the next tournament, but we may have to push it to the next one. But definitely before the next tournament, my bolder prediction, so you're going to want to stick around for that. Everyone, stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and I will see you next time on the Dohyo.